call the meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry, we're unmuted now. Okay, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, thank you. Sleep makes a big difference. All right, moving into our agenda. Prior to starting the meeting today, I did want to share the board is not required to hear comments, but chooses to allow the public a chance to address the board only during the public comment segment of the meeting. Individual speakers are asked to limit their comments to not more than 2 minutes. The remainder of the meeting is designated for the board to conduct the business before them without interruption or unsolicited feedback. The board asks that all comments be civil, courteous, and respectful. Individuals viewing a live stream or recording of this meeting may direct their comments or questions to questions@isd2342.org. Our mission statement is challenge and support our students, staff, and families in each person's growth as an engaged learner and successful citizen of our community. Moving into roll call, I'll start with Christensen.
Here.
Gross.
Here.
Nessman is here. Sabalik.
Here.
Sandstead. Here. Strunk.
Here.
And Ulrich.
Here.
We do have a couple of visitors with us today that wish to address the board. Mr. Olson, would you like to come up and?
Yeah, now?
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted, with Olson Oil, I know I had told somebody, I don't know who, but I think it got back here a couple of years ago. If we can make the bids due and then very quickly know if we get the bid or not, that allows, because I'm bidding off of the futures, you know, what I have to buy over those months that you guys need propane. And obviously they move every day. And if you want the sharpest bid possible, I want, you know, what's called price risk. And so I'm trying to match that as close as I can. And when we go on a week like we did this time, you know, it moved 4, 5, 6, 7 cents. And I'm trying to, you know, get you guys as close as possible. So if it happened to, you know, be at the wrong time, you know, I could get the bid and be upside down. And that's just, so if there's a way we could have that due, you know, whenever you guys want to make it due and then have a quick, you know, 24-hour, 48 at the most turnaround, that'd be great. So that's just what I came down here to say, so.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Swanson?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that you guys kind of turned over the management of the COVID situation last year to Superintendent Hoagie. If that's wrong, let me know, it's fine. But I would encourage you to reclaim that authority. I think that slavish devotion to the CDC guidelines fails to take into account new information. Traditionally, the CDC has been behind the times and like 4 to 6 months lag before they actually make any decisions. For instance, it was well known by last fall, November-ish, that COVID is primarily an aerosol disease and not spread by fomites or spittle. So we wouldn't really need this excess cleaning every Wednesday in which the kids are out of school. Therefore, it deprives them of essentially 20% of their education during that year for a day off. I know those days off always turned into be problems at the household as well. So that would be one issue. Another issue is it became quite clear, and it was known beforehand, like there was huge studies done on influenza and mask wearing and how ineffective they were done, with numbers of 50,000 people. So it's well established that viruses masks don't stop the spread of viruses, at least not these cloth masks that we typically wear. And then last March, a Danish study with 6,000 members came out and really pointed out that the difference between people wearing masks and people not wearing masks is that 1.8% of people wearing masks did not get or got COVID, and 2.1% of people not wearing masks got COVID. So we're talking like 3 out of 1,000 people. And the numbers are really staggering. Last May, I came up with some numbers, and at that point in time, there were 277 deaths from COVID for 0 to 17 in the United States. There were 4 times that many deaths in that age group from cancer. There were twice that many deaths from homicide, twice from suicide. And to put it in perspective, it's twice the risk of dying of COVID as being struck by lightning. It's overblown. We need to have some perspective on some stuff. And there are other districts around here that do not implement the mask the same way. Yes, they came up with the same rules that the state said you got to come up with, but they didn't enforce them the same way. So I'm wondering how many students did we lose in going to a more permissive environment last year? All right. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move into our agenda for today. There are a couple of items to be added to the agenda. Under C, the consent agenda, we'll be adding one item, which is accept the resignation of Jeremy Rapp. That moves C to D, D to E, E to F, and then under E, we'll be adding number 3, which is wraparound care costs. Any other modifications or revisions to the agenda? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve the modified agenda.
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Right.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to our consent agenda. As mentioned before, we only have one item today, accept the resignation of Jeremy Rapp as FTE Social Studies teacher. Questions or comments from the board? If none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to new business, we'll be doing the first reading of the following policies with statutory and recommended changes by MSBA. The policies for review are policy number 304, superintendent contract duties and evaluation, policy number 305, policy implementation, policy number 306, administrator code of ethics, and policy number 401, equal employment opportunity. Mr. Hoagie, if I understood correct, there were no recommended MSBA changes to the policies?
Chrissy pulled our policies, compared them to MSBA newly recommended, and there's been no change. So we're in a position in which it's just to review. We have a responsibility to review all policies once every 3 years. So as we take, 4 to 6 of these each month, we'll meet that. Following the legislative session, we'll have a number of policies that MSBA will update based upon legislative action. So we may be hit with additional policies in the next couple of months.
Very good. Questions or comments from the board? If not, that's just our first reading. So we'll move on to the backside of our agenda. Number 2, consider and approve memorandum of understanding with the West Central Area Education Association for supervision of students using the weight room and facilities for training and conditioning. Mr. Hoagie, did you care to comment at all on this agenda item?
Sure, I gave you an explanation. This is something that started discussion with Jake Fosley and myself about how we have staff members that have been volunteering their time to open the weight room. We'd like to have more consistency in that. If they're going to see true development, that there should be a consistent access there. And it's not part of a coaching contract. It's not part of any teacher's responsibility. So what we discussed is first of all, do we have individuals that would commit to that on a regular basis? And we have a couple of individuals that would do that the majority of the time. And then it came to providing compensation for them. So within our master agreement, we have a section in there for compensation for staff members after regular workday hours, which is $22.50 an hour. So we thought, well, that probably fits this. And so as we looked at it more and then talked about it through negotiations, our 2 negotiations groups, the EA and the board representatives, indicated that this should be put back into the laps of our activities director and the coaches to go through this. And they thought that seemed like a good idea. So I put together the language for the MOU that specifies that. And since negotiations have been completed, this MOU goes through the 2-year cycle of that negotiations period, and it will become part of the master agreement of that section of the master agreement in the next negotiation cycle. So what we do is we allocate time during the school year, 3 days per week. During the summer, we actually are making allowances for 2 sessions, an AM session and a PM session, to provide for the opportunity for athletes who have work conflicts, can't be in the morning, can't be there at night. And we have individuals who are committed that they will supervise at those times as well. So.
Very good. Questions or comments from the board? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve the MOU.
So moved. Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to number 3, consider and approve propane quote for FY22. I know that there was some information sent out, Mr. Hoagie, regarding the propane bids. Did you want to elaborate on this agenda item?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Olson, for coming this morning. And when we put that information out, we request for it to come back on the Thursday prior to the board meeting so we can send that information out with the board packet, because we send that out on Friday. But we might be, and typically it's not real difficult to go through and to make a determination of which quote is the best for the district. So that's something we may take into consideration for next time around. So I really appreciate your point there. So with the quotes that we received, I provided this in the agenda explanation to you, and Mr. Olson had submitted a quote for our next school year, FY22, and then also for FY23. He is the only vendor that had done that, and Mr. Olson, vendor number 1, had the contract for the past year. So we have his proposal of 144.5 for the first year, Ferrellgas at 142.9, Anderson Oil at 152.5, and then the quote for the second year comes in at 129.5. Now, Mr. Olson expressed concern about the volatility of the market, and we look at the market right now in comparison to last year. Last year we were in at 88 cents a gallon. I mean, a significant change, and I don't know where the market has gone since that time, but we have a difference within the quotes for the current year, and under our bidding contract laws and the specifications were provided, you have an obligation to select the low bidder. So if you take just a 1-year contract, then your option would be Ferrellgas of Alexandria. If you would like to select a 2-year quote, you could take Mr. Olson's quote for 21-22 and then also lock in for the following year as well. So, if you do 1 year, I mean, it's pretty easy to make the choice. If you're willing to speculate on where that price might be for the next year, you could potentially take the 2-year option.
So when it comes to farming, it's nice to lock it in for a couple of years to see, and you know what your expenses are. Because nobody can predict what's going to happen next year. Obviously, nobody can predict what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if it's a reasonable price and you're able to lock it in, then it's nice to know that, because then you know exactly what your costs are going to be.
Is there some specialized equipment that we're dealing with at north? I thought some vaporizers or something too that are difficult to transition, or what? Do we know what's
with the bid specifications as they submit that? They give an indication that they're able to do the pressure testing and they would manage that. I mean, they've committed to being able to accomplish that.
okay?
Other questions or comments?
Are we looking at 2 years? I mean, is that,
Well, you'd come to somebody come with a motion to either accept the 1-year quote from Ferrellgas or accept the 2-year proposal from Olson Oil.
Are these prices still?
Yeah, I mean,
It is what it is.
quotes, they're valid. I can't change them unless I can, trust me.
that means we lock it in.
I think there's a lot of value to what Terry said. I mean, when you have it locked in for 2 years, you can plan for that. I mean, you can establish your budget for that next year. Gary, in your business, what are your thoughts as far as a 2-year agreement versus a 1 year?
I'm pretty bullish on oil right now. I think we should go all electric at the school to save, trees and stuff is what we could do, and not worry about electric cars. But I'd make a motion to approve or to move forward with the 2-year contract from Olson.
I'll second that.
Okay.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to number 4, consider and approve the review and comment document prepared for a November 2nd, 2021 election. Mr. Hoagie, do you want to lead the discussion here?
Certainly. I had indicated in email last night that Zerberg were still working on finalizing the review and comment, and they emailed it to me about 11 o'clock last night. So I reviewed some of it today, but I have it available on the screen, and I did email it to each one of you as well. And this is a process for you to go through and approve, and what they place in here are a number of the things that we've already discussed. And I'm going to go through some slides on this that show you some of the significant features of that review and comment. And as we get further into the document, it becomes more of a historical reference of things that we did prior to the last referendum. I was hoping to make it bigger. I can't really make it much bigger.
So if you push you can make it a little bigger if you do the just plus sign up top right there. It'll widen it.
Just
You'll
maybe, you just gotta,
Is it-
that's great, to move the bottom scroll
Oh.
bar over just to get you.
get it in the center.
Yeah.
Doesn't work very good up there then. Works fine on my computer.
Just touch the screen here.
Move it back. Yeah, you can. Yeah, on these.
Kevin, we're gonna need a bigger screen.
Yeah, that'd fix it.
Actually, my email, it's,
Downloaded it. That should be one of these ones. This one, I think this is one you just had open.
yeah. They're probably all the same.
Right.
They're all the same.
If we open it this way, it'll be sharper.
Kevin to the rescue. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what they show on this page on the right is the North Elementary School, the location, which is pretty obvious. South Elementary site, we're still pursuing an agreement for a Hoffman location with property vendor working on contract development. Price seems to be locked in, but to get that document signed, we would need to have that done before our next meeting. This shows the changes that would take place at North. And we had conversation last time about where the pre-K would be and the bus drop off. And after conversation with Natalie and Naomi, we came to the conclusion that we really should flip the bus drop off location and the parent drop off. And if you remember when Zerberg first proposed this last year, they had the bus drop off on the right-hand side and the parent drop off on the left-hand side. So with this change, this is where we have our preschool area. Our English kids are coming to that building. And we've actually flipped the drop off where this is the parent drop off in the morning. So as parents drive in or drop off, they may be stopping along this loop. And there's wide space so they can get around the parked vehicle, but our youngest children will be able to enter into this vestibule, go right into their classrooms. The older students, we talked to Natalie and Naomi about this, and we were concerned about, if the bus drop off is over here, the kids are be heading to the playground. And Naomi and Natalie said, no, they don't do that. They go into their classroom first, drop off their things. Then they either go for breakfast in the commons area, or they drop off their things and they go to the playground. So by having a bus drop off over here, they now get to come into this area. The other thing that we talked about was changing the place of that vestibule or that entrance, because it had been on this side. So now the vestibule is located between our two drop-off locations. Now, the one concern that was expressed is when this shuttle bus comes, which picks up the second group of kids in the afternoon. So when school is dismissed, we're going to have some kids that go to the bus drop off. We're going to have other children that will be in the commons area or perhaps go to the playground. So in the afternoon, when school's dismissed, we have children going to the bus drop off. We have other parents who are picking up their children in that parent pickup point. When that bus comes from Barrett and comes to Elbow Lake then to pick up those children 15 to 20 minutes after school's been dismissed, that pickup will take place over here. So now the children who are on the playground, or the children in the commons area, they'll see the bus arrive. The supervisor out on the playground will be able to notify children that bus has arrived for that shuttle. So then they'll have that spot to see. And there'll be limited parents in this area at that pickup point when they come to this point. So now our change in this diagram works for that transition of students as they come to and from. So in our playground area, and the other thing that's been added right now is we currently have, for our preschool area, we have a small amount of playground equipment located in this area. That equipment will be moved to this grassy area, which currently sits, it's kind of a kickball field right now for our students. That's where that preschool playground equipment will go. This playground stays the same. And this area where this building sits, that all becomes green space for soccer or football, or perhaps developing or placing a basketball court in that area, because we'll be eliminating the ones that are back to the side of the building. So that takes care of the north location. The other thing that was changed is we had a third grade room located here and a third grade room located here. And then this had been the flex room, and Natalie had asked, can we put those two third grade rooms together? So what we did was just flipped. We made this the flex room, and that becomes the third grade room. So now we've got third graders, we've got fourth graders across from each other, fifth graders, first and second, and then our kindergarten rooms. The advantage of leaving them in that point, there won't be any walls that are moving. Those spaces are large, so that the amount of renovation will be minimized so much they're not moving the wall. But when they change this area, it'll be completely stripped down, because we're putting in, updating the electrical, we're putting a new heating and ventilation system. They will put water and restroom into those kindergarten locations, and these preschool areas will also have water and restroom locations within their space. So, by looking at this, we did a few changes that were advantageous. The other change that came about after conversation with Natalie and Naomi is that we had special ed locations sprinkled at different locations throughout the building. And they said, for us and our school size, it would be advantageous to have the majority of that special education in one large location, have it divided out. Because right now we have one primary special education teacher and we have paraprofessionals. So the majority of our special ed will take place right here. So very close to these groups, a little bit of more distance for our kindergarten groups, but our grades 1 through 4, very close to special education. We do have some special education that's going to be over in this area. Our speech will be over in here. And then also our occupational therapy will be in that area as well. But those are provided by individuals different than our full-time staff. Those are people that come to us and spend portions of a day in our building. So I'm really happy with the way that this lays out right now. And the one thing that you need to remember is if the referendum passes in November, if that's the direction that we end up going in August 18th, that things can change even more. So this is the preliminary, this is the first real solid draft. Had input from board members, had input from staff members, had input from the principals in the building. So this appears to work well right now. The one thing that I appreciate about this is that when this school was built, this athletic department area was built very well. If you've been in those locker rooms, they're spacious, and they're whittling those down and they're changing them to dressing rooms that go there. There's special education becomes part of that, and PE storage, PE office, and a technology room. So they're making use of those locker room spaces, so we don't have a large area that sits empty during portions of the day. So they're using a lot of the square feet, and that's what has allowed us to shrink this size somewhat from what we were looking at last summer. So it's dropped down in square footage. But any questions about the design here? Zerberg had provided the diagram or the sketch for our South Elementary. And with our Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting last week, made what we think was probably a significant change for the better. We had the parent drop-off, bus drop-off loop, parking located there. And we didn't have playgrounds identified here. The playgrounds were identified as being back here. But as we talked about this, for a parent that's coming to pick up children or for use outside of the school day, it would really be advantageous for us to have playgrounds in close proximity to the parking lot. And just like at North, at the end of the day, it'd be advantageous for us to have those children area when that shuttle bus comes through to drop off children or pick up children, that it's in close proximity as well. So what had been done originally is this gymnasium sat this way and protruded out to here. So the suggestion by one of the committee members was, I think two came to this conclusion at the same time, can we turn that? Can we turn the gym? So now what we have is we have a pre-K playground located here for our youngest children. We have other playground space for equipment to go there, and then also open green space to go here. There is some buffer between this road and the property line. So if we choose to, this service road could be bumped further to the right to give more playground space, and we'll have ample green space to this side. So when we build this structure and we think, okay, is there growth that's going to occur? And what happens if we grow to the point that we need additional gym space? That can be bumped out to the right. If we need additional common space, that can be bumped out. We have to just shift the playground a little bit. If we need more classroom space, we'd extend onto the appropriate wing that goes as well. So there's buffer space between here and the property line on the right also. So with the location that we'd like to have, the 12 acres, we have room for growth within that design. So committee members, anything else that you have to comment about our flip in our design?
There's a street in this.
It's for you to be up to the top.
Up here?
Yeah,
Okay,
It's north.
yeah. That's sitting with north
got it.
top right now.
Okay, got it.
Realistic,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Then as we get to the other questions, the question 2 deals with the improvements within our secondary school program academic area. So we still have the fitness space we added there. We have the addition of the shop and career and technical. We have the STEAM area off to the right. So by incorporating those, we're doing work around that area. And we also talked about how as we do work in those areas, and we have the greenhouse that's going to sit right into this area. So our parking lot is in disrepair right in here, and then this is not paved. So we talked about how do we get more parking available for our secondary building. So we included in that question too, also the parking areas here. But we also talked about doing an entire parking lot area right here, which would provided ample space for a number of parking spots. But through our discussions, we thought, okay, do we really want to use all of that for parking, or should we be addressing the tennis courts there? So in our conversation, we talked about, can we do resurfacing of the tennis courts, and can we increase parking in this area? That's probably another 60 spaces of parking in that area, which certainly alleviates some of the walk that we see on a regular event basis, because right now, as we have an event with the main entrance here, we do have people parking as far back as there. So by going parking here, the main entrance here, we shorten that route. And then we do have those few events during the year, like a wrestling tournament or a homecoming, in which we certainly fill all of this parking lot and out to the road and out to the highway, as a matter of fact. So with that, we alleviate some of that space. But we also then address that tennis court area by resurfacing. So we haven't changed the whole dollar amount. We've just reallocated funds to take care of that portion. So it seems to be a good fix for us. So, and working with the tennis court, we also talked about how Maya had mentioned the fastest growing sport in the United States right now is pickleball. So the net difference in height is about 3 inches, but the pickleball net, a tennis net will go straight across, or nearly straight across, where a pickleball net droops a little bit. So we'd be sacrificing the exact net, but we paint other stripes on the court. It's a smaller court, so we paint a more neutral color on there. So just like on our basketball court, we have courts going crossways and lengthwise, and we have other things identified in there, like volleyball goes on our main basketball court. So we would identify that as a sport also. So now with 4 courts there, and you play doubles, you've got 16 athletes that can play at one time for a FIAD class. And so for lifetime fitness. Then question 3 is illustrated on this diagram also. Baseball, softball field, 2-field complex. And as the design happens, when we talk to coaches about how would you like the fields to be orientated, in all likelihood, we're going to have our home plates, in the center, concession restroom area in the middle, gravel parking lot access is from the highway back there. And this would be a walking path that would come down this direction or possibly come down this direction, come to our locker room area also. So it shows that location for baseball, softball fields in that area. And then also another part of that question 3 is our running track area. And this is a preliminary design of seeing where things fit. High jump, our running track, a pole vault, long jump, triple jump on the end. And then our weight events would be fit in this lower area down below. So this is an illustration of part of our question 1 and questions 2 and 3. Building and Grounds Committee, any comments on those or any questions? Okay, these 2 pages show our program spaces, the square footage and the spaces available, which will help to finalize and shrink the size of the buildings. These are the pages that show the projected cost from Zerberg for construction. These are not the values that show on the questions. The questions have these amounts, plus Baker Tilly has added in the portions of the cost that are associated with the bond amounts for those. Timeline is shown on the left, where we're looking at August the 18th. We're reviewing comment is submitted first part of this month, submitted tomorrow if it's approved today, and then the 18th will be the resolution for November election. And then it shows the process going through here, and construction will begin in 2023. So we putting in 2021 yet. Design would take place the first part of 2022, go out for bids in the fall or winter, and then construction starts 2023. And this is the information provided by Baker Tilly, and I included some additional information for you in our agenda explanations. I'll get back to that again later as you talk about whether we want to do 20 years or 25. Previously, we stayed with the 20-year bond. And as we go through this now with the additional financial information. And I think we're through the portions now of the current information. Attachment review and comment is a document that if we approve, Michelle and I would address it today. And the second part of this review and comment, the remaining pages, have to do with community survey results that took place last year, information is provided to public. So the real portion of the content, I've shared with you at this point. Is there anything else that you'd like to see perhaps in the review and comment document before I go to the information provided by Baker Tilly? Okay, with the discussion items, number one, I think it's important now to talk about the bonding amounts. Andrea Hedke of Dorsey Whitney has done our bond questions, and that document's been mailed to you. The red portion here is information that I added last night. So when Kelly Smith did the financial projections, he indicated that because our costs have risen slightly from the first time that we went around, because we're looking at, our early projections were for 35 million. And then with the bond costs, we're looking at 35,570. And then also we're looking at $5 million amounts for questions 2 and 3. So when we looked at that, it would have been $153 annually, or $1,275 a month for 3 questions based upon 35 million and 5 million and 5 million. So Kelly indicated that the bond rate has advanced a little bit. It's a little more expensive to borrow money, and projected to be a little bit more. And then also our costs went up. So when we look at a 20-year bond now, rather than 35,570, we're looking at 37 million. So an increase of 1.5 million approximately. So now that question, rather than being $117 on a $100,000 home, it goes to $134. So an increase of $17. And then on questions 2 and 3, rather than being projected at $18, it's now at 18 and 20 respectively. So the final cost for all 3 questions is $172 or $14.33 a month. So it's increased by $19 compared to where we're looking at previously. So his question was that he asked in his italicized statement is, do you want to look at 25 years rather than 20? And when we considered that last time, we dismissed that suggestion because the additional costs would be paid over the life of that bond. So I've summarized that in the final paragraph there. So with a final tax projection, that $100,000 home, the tax amounts are 116, 15, and 17 for those 3 questions. So it's not a significant drop. We're going from 134 down to 116, and for the 2 other questions, there's a very insignificant change. And the annual total for them is 148 rather than 172. So when we look at the drop there, it's a drop for families, but when you look at the total interest paid over 25 years, you're paying $5 million more of interest over, or bond cost and interest over additional 5 years. So the logic that we used last time is that difference in the annual rate wasn't significant enough for a $4 million change, and now we're looking at a $5 million change based upon, new amounts. So, our review and comment document is based on or proposing a 20-year bond amount. And what you'd be doing today is approving the review and comment for submission. Your decision on November vote does not come until August 18th. But we have to submit the document now because it needs to be submitted 60 days prior to the publication date in the newspaper.
I don't think there's enough savings there to make it worth it. I mean, I don't know.
I also think if you look at the history in this building, about the 20-year mark is when audio enhancements needed to be made, and we started talking a lot more about heat pumps. And I would hate to put the board in 25 years in a position where it's difficult to figure out how to finance those things because we've extended the length of the bond. But agreeing with your point, it's not that big of a price difference, I think, tax-wise.
So if that's still the perspective that the board has, it's been expressed by a few of you right now that 20 years is still the direction to go, then there's no action that's needed here. We would just go back to our agenda, back to the approval of the review and comment, and a motion and a second. If there's more discussion, we'd go on that. And if not, you'd approve that. Michelle and I would have a document to sign, and then I'd let Brian Berg and Tony Wolf know that they can submit that to MDE.
Questions or comments from the board? Is there a desire to make a motion to approve the review and comment today?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to number 5, consider and approve 2021-2022 9-month support staff employment agreement. A copy of that was shared with the board after agreement with that group through negotiations. Questions or comments about the 9-month support staff agreement? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion passes. Moving into discussion on our agenda. Number 1, referendum resolution planned for board action on August 18th, 2021. Mr. Hoagie, would like to lead our discussion here.
Okay, I've shared that document with you as well, and there will be a little change in question 1. Chrissy and Andrea Hedke and I went through how do we put all the information needed into that question 1 to make sure that voters understand what we're proposing. And also that question needs to include items that we're including. So a resolution that you'll have on August 18th, it'll have a little different twist in question number 1.
I did provide the new copy, the paper copy to them.
Okay. So Chrissy did provide you a paper copy with the updated language.
Just on number 1, it changed.
This question number 1 has changed. The other 2 are the same as what was previously. So what we did was we moved the section identifying a South Elementary to be located in Hoffman, and that's contingent upon coming up with an agreement with the owner, which was in progress. And then also it identifies new construction. It also includes in there demolition and abatement of that south site, and then changing it to a park area. So it's not just a source site sitting there in the community of Kensington. And then also it addresses makes it clear that it's construction and renovation at North. And located in Bear. So we identified the communities where the schools will be located in that resolution. And the questions are not much different than what I shared with you previously. The dollar amounts have been updated based upon Kelly Smith's. So that's discussion only. And then, like I said, August 18th is the date that you would pass that resolution and then set us down the road for a November election in 2021. That's all I have unless there's questions.
Okay. Comments or questions for Mr. Hoagie? If not, we'll move on to number 2, return to school plan and updates from the CDC, MDH, and MDE. I had reserved comments at the very beginning of the meeting, knowing that this was going to be a discussion item for us today. And I know I would venture to bet that everyone sitting around this table would agree there was no handbook when we went through COVID. And I also think that none of us would have anticipated that this would be our 3rd school year that we're talking about COVID. So with that being said, I do want to commend the board and administration for their collaboration. I feel like it was very much a joint effort in kind of figuring out how to move forward amidst the chaos, so to speak. And I know, Mr. Hoagie, you have some updates about maybe what we could anticipate or expect in this upcoming school year.
Expect is kind of a strong word there. I did sit in on a webinar with MSBA yesterday. And Terry Morrow, their lead legal counsel, had talked about LC and stands for two things. He said, one is last year, the state in MDE provided us pretty strong recommendations and directives on what we needed to do. This year, we'll have more local control. But he said that leads you to the other LC, which is legal counsel. Because now when the Minnesota Department of Health and the CDC strongly recommends something, and if you as a board choose not to follow, or administratively we choose not to follow that recommendation, we place ourselves in a position in which we could potentially become liable. And he also talked about that if the CDC and MDE and the Minnesota Department of Health provide you a directive and you don't follow that, and I choose, or our principals choose to ignore that, or you as a board choose to ignore that, we now become personally liable. Our insurance doesn't cover us anymore. We are now on our own. So if we choose not to follow a directive, we now become personally liable. And so we can't go there. So we're very early in this stage. And the thing that's really changed things for us is that vaccination rate has kind of flatlined. The vaccination hasn't been proven to address the Delta variant of COVID. The Delta variant also is presumed or believed to be more contagious and more severe than what we faced previously. So we're really in the very early stages of this. I mean, it was just last week that the CDC came out with the recommendations that children under 12 should be masked in school. Kind of reverted back to some of the things that we're facing in the spring. So we really need to sort that out. But we need to go back to that local control to see, okay, how are we impacted here at WCA? What's happened in our county area? So if you remember that 14-day case rate that we were, I mean, that's the thing that was gonna be that magical number, that's when you had to lock down, keep kids out of the building, and that threshold was set at a case rate of 50, which we thought, oh man, if we get there, we're really gonna be in tough shape. Well, our rate here at WCA went up over 100, within the county. So for us, we still were in a situation which we probably never had more than 3 positive cases in our buildings collectively at any one time. I mean, we had students, we had staff that tested positive, but at one time in our buildings, we never had more than 3 during the last school year. We had students out, we had staff out, but it was because of close contact quarantine. So we took those precautions to keep people away for a period of 14 days, and they never did contract the virus. There might be some situations in which it did. We only have one situation involving school-related events, and that was on a bus transportation, which we may have had that either through that sporting activity or bus transportation in which we had a person-to-person within a school day or within school events. So our staff and our students did really well. Mr. Swenson's comments this morning about this, early on, we were so concerned about how the virus was to be spread. If you remember graduation a year ago, not this rest, but a year ago, we had students come up to the mic and we were wiping the mics down with sanitizing wipes because that's what we were told to do. And then we're told afterwards that it's going to take several minutes before that to be effective anyhow. We did all these things. We cleaned and sanitized rooms. We spent hours scrubbing things until it was determined that virus variant on a surface may be there for a period of time, but for us to contract the disease from that surface was pretty minimal. So we relaxed that, but we still did social distancing and we still did masking. And did we have some violations with mask use? Absolutely. But with that social distancing and masking, we were successful. So as we go to next school year, the SAFE plan You as board members will be involved in approving a plan on the 18th of August. So next week on Tuesday, our team that we call the ICT team, the Incident Command Team, we're inviting them in again with our administrative team, and we will have a discussion about the most current information that's provided to us from the CDC, MSBA, MREA, all of our statewide associations, plus CDC, federal government, on what we should put together. And as soon as we have drafts of that, I'll send you that information so you get a good look at it. But we'll develop a safe plan to return. Some schools within the state of Minnesota have indicated that they're doing masking. It might be for 12 years and under within those buildings, staff and students, vaccinated or not. Everybody would wear the mask. Some are going to the point in which they are just saying masks are an option. You can choose whether you're a staff member or not. There was discussion yesterday in this MSBA webinar about mandatory vaccinations. Strongly advised, and I heed that advice, not to make that mandatory in our school system for staff members. Terry Morrow had advised against it because there are exceptions for religious beliefs or medical concerns also. And then also, if you would mandate a vaccine requirement, and if you should be one of the very small percentage, that's a very small percentage that has an adverse effect, now you're liable because you made it mandatory for them to work. I'm not sure how our health facilities in this area are functioning, but the ones that I've been associated with recently, they're not requiring vaccines for their healthcare professionals. It's not required. It's strongly encouraged. You will see within the state right now, there's enticements for people to get vaccinated, like a monetary reward for them to get vaccinated. So we're still moving forward. So, when Michelle, when you use the word what to expect, just like last year, we're going to expect changes, is what we're going to expect. But we'll start the year and we'll be in a situation in which, through that discussion yesterday with MSBA, and there must have been 80 people on the webinar across the state. They talked about, yes, you have the plan that you developed, but in some instances, you need to make changes quickly within that plan. And that's what you gave me authority to do last year, that we had the plan to begin, but under a situation which we have to make a decision in a matter of 24 hours, you gave me the authority in consultation with team members to make that decision. And what Terry Morrow recommended yesterday is that you start the year with a plan, you pass a resolution giving the administrative team authority to make changes. But in addition to that resolution, my protection, the other administrators, is that you also within that resolution indicate that you will support the administrative team in making those quick turnaround decisions. Because he said there'd be, you have this issue, which, yep, they give you the authority, but then it's like, well, nope. They made the decision. Boy, it was a really stupid decision. They're kind of on their own. We need to have your support if we go down that road. So those are a lot of things for you to think about for August 18th. So, we have a 2-week span, a lot of things to get accomplished with building bond referendum yet, and then also with safe return to school. And it is a little bit disappointing. With some of the changes with the COVID virus and the most recent CDC announcements, I was hoping for a very clear, clean start, put the masks away, sell all of our PPE equipment. But the fact of the matter is that we still might do that. But we're, as Michelle mentioned, we're much better prepared to deal with it. And I think we can do it on a less restrictive basis. So that's all I have as far as an update there, unless you might have any questions.
I mean, are we at the point with some of this stuff? I mean, realistically, the only way we can make a quick decision would be to call an emergency meeting. So, I mean, that would be my assumption that we're not probably going to do that a whole bunch. But, I mean, that's the only other alternative other than to give you the authority to make those changes.
And calling an emergency meeting, it has to be a real serious reason to call the emergency meeting. So, a situation for this might qualify. And if we can't do that, then we need the 72-hour notice. for meetings. So yeah, we might be delayed.
Otherwise, is it 24 hours for emergency?
24 hours, it could be a matter of 6. You just need to give it, we can publish it on our website and
Okay.
we can show up and meet. So, and those things typically happen with a natural disaster, tornado. I mean, for us, it'd be tornado or power outage or building explosion or an assault within a building by an intruder. So that's the extreme cases in which you could use the emergency meeting. That's a few examples.
What I appreciate about kind of our process before is that even if decisions need to be made very quickly, I myself, and I would think others here too, felt very well informed through communication. That happened very quickly when those things were happening, which gave an opportunity if there were concerns for the board to call and address those with you. But for the most part, we were also very cautious about how we proceeded so that kiddos could play sports and could be in the classrooms and could be in person and not have to do more distance learning than maybe some other districts had to experience. So I do appreciate all of the work there and know that sometimes there are just things that arise that need to be addressed very quickly.
The only comment I would have too is that the local control is nice. And I hope we don't start running off the rails with this, with everybody, having the opportunity to be vaccinated. I did the math too, and last year, 337 deaths attributed to COVID under 18, which is 0.00005045, right, percentage. And on the 10-year average, we lose almost one kid per 100,000 to football. There's so many things that are, 2.8 to all kinds of other accidents and things like that, which is, just the football injuries is double that. Is the state working that hard on, addressing issues and opportunities and guidance? That's what's frustrating, I think, is that they're indicating all these potential concerns when that's not the biggest fish to fry, I don't think. If we want to do a better job, let's address accidents, that's like 5 times more likely to die, than COVID. And football injuries is twice as likely. That's 0.000008 compared to 4. So I think we need to bolt on some common sense and try to educate the kids, right? The best we can. They're not at risk. They're not in the ICUs. They're not filling up. So, but I get we got to follow the rules too.
Good.
Thanks, Dale.
I agree with you completely with your regard to students, but one of the concerns goes beyond that is that student that contracts the virus and then takes it home into their household where aunt, uncle, grandfather, sibling, mother, father, would then contract, and they're much more at risk. They're a high risk person. So, but I agree with you, Gary.
We too, right?
Yeah.
They have the opportunity to be vaccinated today.
That's a risk you take sending any of your kids to school
Yep.
with anything, whether it be influenza or
Awesome.
COVID or anything else. So
Very good argument too.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, when we have local control, I've given preliminary indication to our staff members and people that have asked is that I don't expect that we're going to require masks. There'll be an opportunity. We're certainly not going to require vaccinations. We still will do things such as social distancing as much as possible. As far as our freedom of kids to move throughout the building, that'll be more relaxed than it was, and we won't be quite as stringent. But individuals that do have that concern about risks, just like Kayla said, there are things that they can do to prevent that. They can become vaccinated. They can mask. The adults at home can be vaccinated, or they can change residence. So they can choose.
Are we still required to provide the distance? How does that work?
No. Thank you.
Because that's going to play a part in some of this decision.
Hey, here are some real key things. I'm glad you asked. And remember, things can change. At this point, we do not have to provide distance learning. So for that family that wanted to stay home, keep their kids at home, and then we were to provide them video opportunity, that does not have to be done. And that would be a huge relief for our staff. It's a huge time consuming responsibility. It's not as simple as clicking a button and you're ready to go with the information home. So those families will have an opportunity either to choose homeschool or some other online school. Now, we will treat kids who are quarantined or who have the virus in their home. We'll treat that as an absence, and they'll be treated like a regular absence. But rather than being an online type situation, it's here's the assignment, here's what we're doing in class, and they'd have a responsibility and they'd have a time allotment to get that return. So we're not required to do distance learning as we were last year. Last year, the requirement was that if a staff member could work from home, they should work from home. That's no longer in effect. So the district chooses if somebody can work from home or not. So if we think that somebody can do the job, the district decides that person can work from home. And if that individual doesn't want to come in and work in our building and take the precautions, I mean, they can be vaccinated, they can be masked, they can social distance. If they don't want to do that, then it would be a resignation because you choose on where the location is. So some of those strict requirements on us are no longer there. So thank you very much for asking.
Question. Any other questions or comments or thoughts? If not, we'll move into number 3, wraparound care costs.
Okay, Naomi provided, an email to you with her proposal. We had some discussion about where should the costs be for the current school year for the wraparound care. And as Naomi and I talked about this, we're not providing wraparound care because we want to take business away from other people in the community. We want to provide a service where it would be available to families if needed. So our costs are higher than what our local daycares are, but we're providing a service that can be convenient to parents because they can do the preschool, and if they can't make arrangements for daycare to pick up at midday, then they can use the wraparound program. So our proposal is to go back 2 years to the previous year and use the rates there. The only change is incorporating a family opportunity. So if a person has a set of siblings that are using the program, that they can have a reduction in their fees. So she provided the fees for you, and we didn't put it on for action because with this situation, we didn't see that this was something that was approved previously by the board. But if you have any questions or would have a suggestion on how we might modify this, I'd certainly take your input, and I'd share that with Naomi before she sends the information out to our families.
Questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing as none, we are at the end of our agenda, so I will ask for a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Oh, I just wrote on my